Waltz of Time. Prologue. Spring, 1977. The record shop, Waltz of Time, sat tucked at the end of a narrow alley. The smell of old varnish drifting from the wooden doorframe mingled with the dusty scent of vinyl LPs to create a strangely intoxicating perfume. Outside, a spring rain fell in fine threads, and the droplets gathered on the glass window shimmered in the shop's amber light. This is a Czech masterpiece Smetana's Ma Vlast, the Moldau movement. Kong Minju, 22 years old, smiled brightly as she held out the LP sleeve to her customer. This small record shop, started 30 years ago by her father, Kong Il-sung, had now passed into her hands and seemed to come alive again. Minju poured into it the same love of music she'd inherited from him. That day, he came again. Lee Jung-hoo, the young man of 22, pushed open the shop door in his worn coat. He was a university student, but with his family in no position to support him. He scraped by on part-time work. Still, he carried a dream someday. He would build something great and leave this narrow alley behind for a wider world. Minju, what would you recommend today? Since you love classical music, how about this? Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 5, the Emperor Wilhelm Kempf's recording. They grew naturally close. Jung-hoo visited her shop often at first for the music, then increasingly for Minju herself. Her smile, her passion for music, the warmth in her eyes. He loved all of it. Minju liked him too. She liked his steadiness, his quiet strength. He was poor now, but his will to make something of himself felt solid, trustworthy. Gradually, the two drew closer, beginning to dream of a shared future. That autumn, Jung-hoo made her a promise. Minju, I'll make something of myself, I swear it. And when I do, I'll turn this shop of yours into something bigger, something beautiful. We'll build a world filled with music, just the two of us. Minju smiled shyly and nodded. She was happy. The happiness felt like it would last forever. But with winter came change. Jung-hoo's family had once run a decent-sized shop in Seoul, but his father's business had failed, leaving the family buried in debt. And Jung-hoo was working part-time just to pay for his own tuition. In those circumstances, there was one sliver of hope: his uncle, who had emigrated to America 30 years ago. Lee Jung-min, Jung-hoo's uncle, had gone to Los Angeles, running a small trading company, and hit it big in the late 1960s importing electronics components. With no children of his own, he'd always been fond of his nephew and, every time he visited Korea, would say, "You're a smart boy, come to America and help me." That winter, an urgent call came from the uncle. "Jung-hoo, I've been told my heart isn't doing well. They say I need surgery soon. The recovery will take time, and on top of that, I've got a major contract coming up and I can't manage it alone. I need you. Can you come to America right away?" Jung-hoo hesitated. His uncle kept talking. "This isn't just about helping me. I want to groom you as my successor. You know I have no children if you come here. Learn the ropes, help me run things. I want to hand this company over to you someday. How many years are left until you finish university in Korea? And you haven't even done military service yet. That's at least 4 more years, and you'd be scraping together tuition money the whole time. I'd help if I could, but with my health the way it is, I don't know what could happen. Honestly, you coming to America is the best thing for both of us. I know it's a shame to leave university unfinished. But wouldn't it be worth more to learn real business here? Once you're settled, I'll send you to university here too, if you want. And I'll take care of your father's debts, all of them." Going to America was, on paper, the wise choice for Jung-hoo and for his family. But he couldn't stop hesitating. If he left Minju now, there was no telling when he'd see her again. Then a few days later, his father called him in. "Jung-hoo, accept your uncle's offer. This is your chance, and it's the only way this family gets back on its feet. I've already failed, but you're different. You have to succeed." His father's eyes were full of desperate pleading. Creditors called every day. His mother cried in secret more nights than not. Jung-hoo felt the weight of his family like a stone on his chest. But there was another complication. His uncle's business partner had a daughter. The partner wanted nothing more than to see her marry Jung-hoo. His uncle brought it up carefully. "I'll be straight with you, Jung-hoo. Mr. Kim is our biggest investor right now, and his daughter Soojin has taken a liking to you. You remember Sujin 2 years ago, when I visited Seoul with Mr. Kim and his wife, you showed us all around Gyeongbokgung Palace. The Kims were very impressed with you. And Sujin clearly had her eye on you too. She still mentions you. Of course, marriage is entirely your decision. But if you were to marry Sujin, well, you'd have the wind at your back. Mr. Kim would be your greatest champion. Jung-hoo had a month to decide. He couldn't sleep. He loved Minju. But the debts, his father's desperation, and the one clear exit from poverty, all of it pressed down on him. Jung-hoo was 22. He was too young and too weak. He made the coward's choice. On a cold winter day, he went to Waltz of Time one last time. He had meant to tell Minju everything. But that day, her father Kang Il-sung was there in the shop too. Jung-hoo, what are you looking for today? Jung-hoo looked at Minju's face. She was smiling her usual bright smile, happy, just as always. In that moment, he couldn't bring himself to speak. If I tell her I'm leaving, what will happen to Minju? I can't ask her to wait. It could be 5 years, maybe 10. He came back a few days later and still couldn't bring himself to say it. In the end, Jung-hoo fell back on a coward's reasoning. He had no promise of return. No certainty that he'd refuse Sujin and come back. Better to disappear cleanly, that was what he told himself. She'll resent me at first, but at least this way she'll be able to forget me. She'll move on and find someone better. That night, he wrote her a letter. A week later, he slipped it into the mail slot at Waltz of Time. And boarded the plane to America. The letter read, Minju, I'm sorry. I love you, but I couldn't give up on my dream. I'm going to America. I don't know when I'll be back. I can't ask you to wait. Please forget me, and be happy. Forgive me. When Minju received that letter, she closed the shop for several days. The first day, she wept endlessly, without stopping. The day after, she didn't cry at all. She got up as if nothing had happened, sorted through her LPs. One by one, and quietly erased Jung-hoo from her daily life. But deep inside, she heard something break. She pressed her teeth together and held on. A few months later, Minju discovered she was pregnant. Jung-hoo's child. She decided to raise the baby alone and named her daughter Ji-yoon. Profound grace. The deepest kind of blessing. Jung-hoo had left, but now she had someone precious to protect. She believed Ji-yoon was the profound grace God had given her. Minju spent her whole life tending to that record shop. And in 2020, in the midst of the economic wreckage of the pandemic, she passed away. The only thing she left her daughter Ji-yoon was this small record shop, Waltz of Time. Part 1. A strange routine and the battle to hold on. October 2025, a narrow alley in Mapoku, Seoul. Kang Ji-yoon was a woman in her early 50s. Her face bore the marks of years lived. But also a stubborn, steely will etched somewhere beneath the surface. She stared down the eviction notice plastered to the glass door of the record shop, Waltz of Time. The words "Final Notice," printed in red, bored into her eyes. They're back at it. She dug her nails beneath the notice and tore it off. The rip of paper echoed through the quiet morning alley. Over the last 6 months, these notices had come and gone more than 10 times. Stepping inside, the familiar smell of vinyl wrapped around her, old plastic, aging paper, the particular scent that only time can make. Ji-yoon had grown up breathing this smell. Her mother Minju had always been here, sitting at the counter polishing records. Recommending music to customers, or just listening quietly, a small smile on her lips. She murmured at the empty counter. 4 years had passed since her mother's death, and still the absence ached like something raw. The shop had passed from her grandfather to her mother, and now to Ji-yoon, a family trade carried through 3 generations. But the world had moved on. Nobody bought LPs anymore. People streamed music, downloaded thousands of songs with a tap. A record shop had become an anachronism. For the past 2 years, sales had been near nothing. Ji-yoon worked part-time jobs on the side just to keep the door open. But even that was no longer enough, especially since the announcement of plans to build a data center in the area. All the other building owners in the neighborhood had already sold, having reasoned that the area was practically dead anyway and it was worth taking the good money on offer. Now only Ji-yoon's shop remained. Ms. Kang, we're prepared to increase the compensation. Please, work with us on this. The developer's representatives had come more than once. But Ji-yoon was immovable. "This shop is not for sale. My mother gave her whole life to this place." They shook their heads and left. Before long, legal proceedings began. Forced demolition on grounds that the aging building was a safety risk. Months earlier, a few people in work overalls had come to conduct a safety inspection. And it had all been the setup for this. Ji-yoon couldn't sleep at night, torn between her duty to protect the shop and the hard facts of her situation. She had made a promise to her mother. Up in heaven she would hold on. She would not let the last piece of her mother's life be torn down. Then one Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, he appeared for the first time. "Hello." A low voice, the door eased open. Ji-yoon looked up. A well-dressed older man stood in the doorway, mid-70s, she guessed, wearing a dark fedora pulled down over his forehead, a gray overcoat. His face was half hidden, but his bearing was neat, dignified. "Is there something I can help you find? I thought I might just browse, if that's all right." "Of course. Take your time." The old man moved slowly through the shop, running his eyes across the LP sleeves, reaching out to touch them with a kind of tender care, as if greeting old friends. After a long while, he picked up one record. "How much is this one?" "Ah, that's Smetana's Ma Vlast. Czech Philharmonic recording from the 1970s. Good condition, so 30,001. The man studied the sleeve for a moment. Something unnameable passed through his eyes. Then he opened his wallet and produced two 50,001 bills. "Keep the change." "I'm sorry, it's only 30,000. "That's all right. Please keep this shop going a long time." He tucked the LP under his arm and left quickly. Ji-yoon watched him go, slightly bewildered. Strange man. The following Wednesday, he appeared again, same time, same coat. He chose another LP, paid 100,000 won, and waved away the change. Wednesday after Wednesday, the same ritual: pick an LP, pay 100,000, refuse the difference. Ji-yoon started calling him the Wednesday mystery man in her head. He was the shop's only regular, and he was fast becoming its only real source of income. But who he was, or why he kept coming, she had no idea. About a month in, she happened to see a news article. Chairman Lee Jung-hoo moves forward with large-scale data center in Mapo-ku. The article included a photograph. Ji-yoon's stomach dropped. This man. It was him. The Wednesday mystery man. The dignified old gentleman who came each week to buy records was Lee Jung-hoo, the chairman who wanted to demolish her shop. Her mind raced. Why is he coming here every week? Is he scouting the place? Or is it guilt? 100,000 a week. That's all it was buying off his conscience, 100,000 at a time. All while planning to tear me down. Please keep this shop going a long time. The nerve. Ji-yoon was livid. She branded Lee Jung-hoo a ruthless property predator and concluded he was nothing but a two-faced hypocrite, playing both sides. While the clock ran out on her, she knew she didn't want to sell. Her grandfather had built it, her mother had given her life to it. Every memory Ji-yoon carried lived within these walls. She could not be the one to end it. But the reality was pitiless. Business was failing, and there was little left in the way of legal recourse. She sat down before her mother's photograph and wept. "Amma, I'm sorry. I don't think I can hold on to your shop." Then one day, something shifted in her. She couldn't go quietly. She would fight. If nothing else, she would expose Lee Jung-hoo's hypocrisy for all the world to see. Ji-yoon ordered a large banner, white letters on red. Unjust demolition. Chairman Lee Jung-hoo, get out. She hung it across the front of the shop. Passers-by stopped to stare. People took pictures. What had begun as a quiet struggle was becoming a public war. The following Wednesday, Lee Jung-hoo didn't come. Part 2. The media battle and a guilt that erupts. Lee Jung-hoo sat in his home study gazing out the window. From the 30th floor of his luxury apartment, the nighttime skyline of Seoul glittered far below. But inside, he was dark. He possessed everything 50 years of work could buy: a sprawling IT conglomerate. Hundreds of billions of won in assets. The kind of standing that made people lower their voices in his presence. He had built all of it from nothing, from a poor young man into one of the most successful businessmen in the country. It was the kind of success story people envied. But at the very beginning of that success was an act of betrayal. Kang Minju. Even 50 years later, her name still ached in his chest. He had loved her fully, truly. But he had chosen ambition over love. A single brief letter slipped under a door, and that was all. In America, Jung-hoo succeeded. Business flourished, money was never an issue again. But happiness was another matter. He had cared for his wife and they'd had a good life together. Yet cruelly they had no children. And the way of men is that they cannot forget their first love. More than that, a man who abandons his first love never escapes his own reckoning. Somewhere in the chamber of his heart, Minju had always been there. And with her, Korea. When the 1998 financial crisis sent Korean companies crashing, Jung-hoo saw his chance. He bought up promising businesses at distressed prices and moved his base of operations back to Seoul. But coming home, he didn't go looking for Minju right away. He lacked the courage, and it felt like a betrayal of his wife. For years, nothing. Then, at a college reunion, he ran into an old friend who happened to live in Minju's neighborhood, and what he heard stopped the air in his lungs. "Jung-hoo, do you remember that record shop, Waltz of Time? You had a thing for the owner's daughter, didn't you? You used to come by the neighborhood every other day just to get into that shop." The man didn't know Jung-hoo and Minju had actually dated. Anyway, so the girl had a baby unwed, can you believe it? The whole neighborhood was buzzing. Nobody knew who the father was, people were saying he'd run off. It was right around the time you left for America, actually. Jung-hoo's heart stopped. "Actually, I suspected you at the time." The man laughed. "Thought you'd gotten her pregnant and run to America." The table erupted in laughter. Jung-hoo could barely breathe. All he managed to say, out of the wreckage of the moment, was, "The child, what's her name?" "Kang Ji-yoon, I think." Took the mother's surname. "She's in university by now." "Time flies, doesn't it? Better go visit your daughter, Jung-hoo." More laughter all around. But Jung-hoo couldn't laugh. She took her mother's surname. Those words drove straight through him. Kang Ji-yoon. The child had her mother's name. Because there was no father's name to give her. That night, he went alone to stand before Minju's record shop. From a distance, he looked at it. The darkened shop looked lonely. From that day on, Jung-hoo was certain Kang Ji-yoon was his daughter. The timing, the surname, the rumors, everything fit. He began watching from afar Ji-yoon walking to school. The two of them, mother and daughter, tidying the shop together. But he never drew close. He had no right. The years slipped by. 4 years ago, Minju died. Jung-hoo could not bring himself to go to the funeral. He didn't deserve to be there. But that night, he stood alone before her record shop and wept. "Minju, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Not long after Minju passed, Jung-hoo's wife died too, her existing illness overtaken by COVID. Jung-hoo's spirit crumbled. He blamed himself, and for a long time he stayed away from Waltz of Time. Slowly, time did its work. When something like peace returned, he found that he wanted to see Ji-yoon. There was no longer any reason to watch from a distance. Minju was gone, and his wife Sujin up in heaven. Now would not blame him for wanting to find his child. So a month ago, he had started coming every Wednesday at 3 o'clock to Waltz of Time. 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, the exact time, 50-odd years ago, that he and Minju had promised to meet. He would come to the shop once a week without fail, he'd pledged to her then. He still remembered. Then one evening, his secretary called with a tense voice. "Chairman, there's something spreading on social media." "What is it?" "It's about the Mapo-ku record shop, the demolition." A banner saying, "Unjust demolition. Chairman Lee Jung-hoo, get out." It's been photographed and posted everywhere. The media's picked it up. Jung-hoo pulled out his phone. Thousands of comments. "This is exactly how the rich grind down the poor." Lee Jung-hoo thought he was a philanthropist. Turns out he's a fraud. Ripping the last hope away from someone who has nothing. What a villain. Jung-hoo turned off the screen and stared out the window. It made sense that Ji-yoon hated him. But the whole world seeing him as a monster that was harder to bear. The next day, reporters gathered at the entrance of his company. "Chairman, can you respond to the accusations about the Mapo record shop demolition?" He could say nothing. To tell the truth meant exposing his past with Minju and the fact that Ji-yoon was his daughter. But he couldn't do that without her knowing and consenting. A week later, a prominent YouTuber set up a live stream in front of Waltz of Time. "Viewers, this is the record shop that corrupt tycoon Lee Jung-hoo is trying to demolish by force." A family business, 3 generations in the making, and he's ready to tear it down overnight. The viewership exploded. The comment section was a flood of outrage. Watching from home, Jung-hoo felt his chest being rent in half. The shop he had wanted to protect, the space that held every memory he had of the woman he'd loved, had become the instrument of his undoing. That night, he began to write. A letter to Ji-yoon. A letter with all of the truth inside. Ji-yoon, I am your father. 50 years ago I loved your mother and I betrayed her. That has been my sin every day since. I wanted to protect you but I didn't know how. He wrote with trembling hands, 50 years of guilt bleeding into every line. Then he wrote the final sentence. You don't have to forgive me. All I ask is that you know the truth. I was not a villain. I was only a coward. He sealed the letter. Into the envelope he also placed the photographs of Minju he had kept for 50 years. The dozens of letters he had written, but never sent to her, and the plans he'd drawn up for rebuilding Waltz of Time on the ground floor of the new data center. He knew the current shop couldn't survive much longer. But rebuilt in a new space he was certain it could thrive, could be loved again. He wanted to keep the promise he'd made all those years ago. I'll make it bigger. I'll make it something beautiful. Not the same record shop, but a living archive of LP records. And he wanted Ji-yoon, his and Minju's daughter, to be the one to run it. This has to end. There's nowhere left to run. He had made his decision. Next Wednesday, he would go to Ji-yoon and give her all of it in person. That night, he gazed at Minju's photograph and murmured to it. Minju, I've done you a wrong that cannot be forgiven in this lifetime. I'm going to tell Ji-yoon everything. She'll be stunned, I know, but it has to be done. It can't wait any longer. The longer it goes, the worse it will get. Will she be able to forgive me? It breaks my heart to even wonder. Part 3. On the verge of confession, a waltz interrupted. Wednesday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Jung-hoo stood once more before Waltz of Time. The banner still hung across the door. Chairman Lee Jung-hoo, get out. Seeing his own name on it was like a blade between the ribs. But he had made up his mind. There was no more running. He would lay everything bare before Ji-yoon and confess what he had done. From his worn leather bag, Jung-hoo drew out the envelope. Inside were 50 years of diary entries, the letters he had never sent Minju, her black and white photograph, and the detailed plans for restoring Waltz of Time on the first floor of the data center. Ji-yoon, will you be able to forgive me when you read this? No, I don't even deserve to ask for forgiveness. But the truth, at least. You deserve the truth. That it was my betrayal of your mother that became the great weight of my life. He reached out to open the shop door. Hey, wait, hold on. A voice from the mouth of the alley. He turned. 2 reporters, cameras in hand, were moving toward him from about 30 meters away. Chairman Lee Jung-hoo, is that you? He froze. If the press caught him here, everything he'd planned telling Ji-yoon quietly, privately, would be shattered. It would all become public, right here on this doorstep. He ducked quickly into a side alley. The reporters rushed forward, but Jung-hoo had already disappeared into the labyrinth of backstreets. He had walked these lanes countless times in his youth, he knew every turn. After about 10 minutes, Jung-hoo stopped to catch his breath at a vacant lot 2 blocks away. His heart hammering. The exertion was too much for an old body. He thought about abandoning the plan for today. But the moment passed, and his heart steadied. No. The reporters will give up soon. They'll assume I'm not coming back. I'll wait them out. 30 minutes later, he eased carefully back toward Waltz of Time. The reporters had gone. The alley was quiet. He stood before the door again. But this time, Ji-yoon's voice filtered through from inside. She was on the phone. Can you believe how shameless that man is? How does someone like that get to be successful? I couldn't figure out why he was handing over 100,000 won for an LP. Just buying himself a clear conscience, that's all. Planning to bulldoze my shop and spending a little pocket change to feel better about it. It's disgusting. I'm going to fight him to the end. A world where people like him get to strut around this way is broken. I'll keep going to the press. Everyone should know what kind of hypocrite he is. Jung-hoo's hand trembled. He lowered it slowly from the door handle. Ji-yoon's voice was full of fury, full of hatred aimed directly at him. Ji-yoon, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He reached into the envelope for the letter, for Minju's photograph. His hands shook as he clutched them. He stepped back from the door. Then he reached forward to leave the envelope on the doorstep. If not by words, then at least by this. Let her have the truth. Ji-yoon. He breathed the name. I'm your father. That was when it happened. A weight crushing down on his chest. The air refusing to come. His heart seizing and lurching in an arrhythmic stutter. Jung-hoo pressed his hand against his chest. 50 years of guilt, weeks of relentless media attacks. The frantic sprint through alleyways to escape the reporters. And then this moment, this unbearable extremity of feeling, all of it fell upon his heart at once. He stumbled. The letter and photographs scattered from his grasp onto the ground. The wind caught the black and white photo of Minju's young face and lifted it. Jung-hoo went to his knees. His vision darkened at the edges. The last thing he saw was the banner stretched across the door. Chairman Lee Jung-hoo, get out. Yes, I was that man. Minju, I'm sorry. Ji-yoon, I'm sorry. Lee Jung-hoo collapsed on the doorstep of Waltz of Time, the shop of the woman he had loved, the shop she had been so desperately trying to save. A passerby screamed. Someone collapsed. Call 119 please, someone call an ambulance. Ji-yoon burst through the door. She saw the old man on the ground. Lee Jung-hoo. She wanted to look away. But the urgency of the scene was absolute. This was not a moment she could walk back from. This was life and death. Sir, sir. She shook him. He didn't respond. That was when she noticed the scattered letters. And the old photograph on the ground. The wind lifted one, a black and white print of a young woman laughing in front of a record shop. Ji-yoon picked it up. Her hand froze. Is this, Amma? But the ambulance siren was already drawing close. The paramedics came running and lifted Jung-hoo onto a stretcher. Ji-yoon stood still, the photograph clutched in her hand, not quite there. Lee Jung-hoo died in the hospital that night. Until the very end, he never regained consciousness. In his hand, the medics found a photograph of Minju pressed tight. Even then, a nurse found it and set it aside with the rest of his belongings. Lee Jung-hoo, age 75. One of Korea's most prominent figures in technology and philanthropy. He left this world misunderstood, the truth he had carried all his life finally silenced. Part 4. An inheritance of regret, an archive of atonement. A week after Jung-hoo's death, his funeral was held quietly. Ji-yoon learned of it through an obituary in the paper. Chairman Lee Jung-hoo passed away at age 75. She read it in a complicated silence. The man she had publicly condemned had died in front of her shop. Guilt came crashing in, but beneath it, a thin voice kept insisting. I wasn't wrong. I had every reason. A few days later, Jung-hoo's attorney came to find her. Are you Kang Ji-yoon? Yes, I am. I represent the late chairman Lee Jung-hoo. He left instructions that I deliver something to you personally. The attorney handed her a large envelope. Ji-yoon opened it with uncertain hands. Inside several letters, old photographs, and a bank passbook. She unfolded the first letter. To Ji-yoon. If you are reading this, I am already gone. I ask, first, for your forgiveness, though I know I have no right to it. I only ask that you know the truth. 50 years ago, I loved your mother, Kang Minju. I loved her with everything in me. But I made a coward's choice. I chose ambition over love and abandoned her. That is the sin I have carried every day since. I came back to Korea 30 years ago and looked for her. By then she was already raising a daughter alone, on her own, struggling. That daughter was you, Ji-yoon. Ji-yoon, you are my daughter. That I could not tell you this sooner is, again, my cowardice. I was the man who betrayed your mother. Who failed in every duty a father owes his child. All I managed was to watch from a distance and drown in guilt. Every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, when I came to Waltz of Time. It was not strategy. It was memory. I wanted to sit in the music of that shop and remember the afternoons. When Minju used to recommend records to me, 50 years ago. As for the data center, I had planned all along to restore Waltz of Time on the ground floor. A bigger, more beautiful space, with every LP Minju ever loved, a place where her dream could finally live. It was the promise I made to her back then. I'll make your shop into something bigger, something wonderful. I wanted to keep it, even now, even this late. But I could not bring myself to explain. I knew you would misunderstand, and still, I could not find the courage to tell you the truth. Your anger at me was just. I was a wicked man. I betrayed your mother, and I failed to be your father. Your public stand against me was no more than I deserved. The passbook enclosed contains what I should have given your mother long ago. Every year of child support and living expenses I owed, with interest. It belongs to you. I'm also including the plans for the Waltz of Time restoration. Please make it real. It is my last act of penance for Minju. I know I cannot be forgiven. But I needed to say that I am sorry. I am so deeply, truly sorry. Your cowardly father, Lee Jung-hoo. Ji-yoon's hands shook as she read. Tears fell onto the words. Father? She opened the other letters, Jung-hoo's unsent letters to Minju, written over 50 years. Each one saturated with love and regret and guilt. Minju, I thought of you again today. A spring day like the ones you loved, and there you were in my mind. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I loved you. I still love you. Ji-yoon wept. She sobbed from somewhere beyond grief. All of it had been a misunderstanding. The man she had condemned was not a predator. He was her father. He was the man who had never stopped loving her mother. I killed him, she whispered. I killed him. She sank to the floor. Her public attacks, her campaign of exposure, they had driven her father to his death. She had fought to protect the shop her mother had loved. And in doing so, she had killed the man her mother had once loved. The attorney spoke quietly. Until the very end, he held no grievance against you. In fact, he worried about the pain you would carry when you finally learned the truth. Ji-yoon pressed her forehead to the floor and wept. For days, she could do nothing. She kept the shop closed, sealed herself in her room, and cried, cycling again and again through her mother's photograph and her father's letters, slowly grasping the full shape of their love. And the full measure of her own blindness. A week later, she made a decision. She would fulfill her father's last wish. Appa, she said aloud. I'll build the Waltz of Time. I'll build the space that holds the love you and Amma shared. She called the development company. Please carry out the plan for the ground floor. Build the Waltz of Time there. I'll run it myself. Epilogue. A waltz, finally complete. 2 years later. Spring, 2027. On the ground floor of the newly built data center in Mapoku. Waltz of Time was reborn. Not a restoration, a resurrection. Thousands of LP records lined the shelves of the wide, bright space. Vintage record players and old speakers stood along the walls. And at the center of the room, a special corner had been set aside. The Lee Jung-hoo, Kang Minju Memorial Music Archive. Ji-yoon had become its curator. She had poured her father's inheritance. And everything she had into bringing this place to life. Along one wall, the LPs Jung-hoo had bought week by week were displayed. Smetana's Ma Vlast, Beethoven's Emperor Concerto, Chopin Nocturnes, Dvorak Symphonies, the records Minju had once recommended to a young man named Jung-hoo 50 years ago. Beside them hung 2 photographs side by side. A young Minju and a young Jung-hoo together in the record shop, caught mid-laugh. The only photograph anyone had ever taken of them. Ji-yoon stood before her visitors each day and told the story. This space was built from one man's 50 years of guilt and from one woman's misunderstanding, her grief, and her remorse. The visitors listened in quiet. My father, Lee Jung-hoo, loved my mother, Kang Minju. But he couldn't hold on to that love. For 50 years he carried the weight of what he had done. And every week he came to this shop to sit with her memory. Her voice wavered, and I called him a villain. What happened between us was the tragedy that misunderstanding builds. I am the one who took my father from this world. Someone in the audience asked, do you have regrets? Every day, Ji-yoon said. But now I'm trying to turn that regret into something closer to amends. I want to preserve my parents' love in this place. To remember what a misunderstanding can cost and to hope that others might see it in time and choose differently. She placed an LP on the turntable. The needle touched the groove, and a waltz drifted out into the room, quiet, searching, full of longing. Chopin, Minju's favorite. This is where the true waltz of atonement begins. The music filled the room. 50 years of time, of misunderstanding, of guilt, of love, dissolved into the melody. Ji-yoon looked up at the photographs of her parents and whispered, Amma, Appa, dance now, together. Dance your waltz of time. Outside, a spring rain had begun to fall just like that day, 50 years ago. The day Minju and Jung-hoo first met. Waltz of Time had found its new beginning, a place to hold 2 people's unfinished love story forever. A place where misunderstanding and regret could be transformed, slowly, into love and forgiveness. And there, Ji-eun lived her days, carrying forward her parents' atonement and her own. The waltz played on, through time, forever.